This week we get Rainswept into the Unavowed. Turns out it's just another office hustle. This and more on episode 156 of Indie Game Riot. Indie Game Riot! Hey everybody, I am Josh, joined once again by the one and only, maybe, I'm not sure if there's other ones of you, but
there actually is another one.
His name is Ian McCammett, and he now has to fight to the death because there can be only one.
There can be.
So
I don't know where the other one lives, but I had to do a background check on myself again for my immigration shit, and there's someone else with my name.
At some point, I expect to be heading to happen, because that's the only way to kill the
true Highlander way. Yeah. No, absolutely.
I see your mustache has flopped over.
It has, yes. It's finally joined its lower part.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. Well, I can still get it, but now I have to put in effort. Eventually, I'm just gonna go full Nietzsche and just have like a gigantic another beard on my upper lip.
You should just spike out your mustache and your beard. Just spike it.
You know when I'm in the shower, I'll do that. I'll like take the shampoo and I'll like make myself like a genie beard.
I used to have a Jack Sparrow beard in college.
Nice.
Not Jack Sparrow hair, although I could have. It was more of a Jewfro, even though I'm not Jewish. But I just had this big curly mop on my head, and then I had this people like to call it the Pharaoh beard actually, because it was like just on the chin, but it was like super stiff and pointed out.
Right.
One of those. So
nice. You gotta bring it back, man. You gotta bring it back.
The style. Was that a 2000 style, or was I just not? Because here's the thing.
I think that's a 3000 style, and you were just ahead of the curve there.
I'm a genius, just not in my own time. Thing is, I wasn't allowed to have facial hair in boarding school outside of like a light mustache and some sideburns down to the earlobes. And I would not wear a light mustache because, I don't particularly want to look like John Waters or a pedophile. But
why not?
But when I got out of school and went to college, everything just I let it go, and it was a hot mess. Good time.
Oh yeah.
And speaking of hot mess, how's your past couple of weeks been going? By the way, I apologize to everyone for missing that. We got Ian's got some real life things going on. I got some real life things going on. Shit happens. I had my son's birthday, and Ian's getting ready to do stuff, and you had some sort of computer problems.
Yeah. It was more of a location problem. I was one place and my computer was elsewhere.
Oh.
And I couldn't get to it. It was very distressing.
Your IV to the world.
Yeah, no, it was a huge problem. There's some sort of clerical error that wound up with me in one state and my computer in another one.
As soon as you got home, you just put the Ethernet cord right into your vein.
Yeah.
But how has been the past couple of weeks outside of that?
Oh, it's been pretty hectic. Moved out of the apartment, and I'm just waiting for the last of my paperwork to come through so that I can cross the border and study in Canada. So hopefully that will come in the next couple of days. In the worst case scenario, basically I have until about 2 weeks after the start of the semester, and if that happens, we'll have to find another arrangement. But if it gets cut close, I might just go up there and crash on somebody's couch and start going. So we'll see what happens.
Just anybody's couch.
Yeah, exactly.
Where are you going?
Canadians
Toronto?
are very friendly, Yeah.
You're just gonna get up to Toronto. Some French guy. So, hey man, I'm just gonna sleep here. Okay.
Yeah.
Even though that's not how the French sound. They sound French.
So we'll see what happens. But it's been hectic. It's been, everything's very tentative, but I'm just sort of trying to take it as it comes. And at the very, very least, I get, a couple of weeks of, freedom from the obligations of work and life and whatnot. So.
Oh, I told you this before the show, but I'll show it to everyone who's watching the recorded version or live or whatever. One of the things I did, we got a new kitten. There's the butthole right there.
That's how you know it's a real kitten, not a counterfeit one.
You gotta check the butthole. Her name is Nori, and I don't know what kind of cat she is, but she's got the tortie pattern, which actually usually torties have like a lot more red, but we don't know exactly who the dad is, but we think we know. So I think her color is actually the dad's colors with tortie pattern from the mom. If you don't know what tortie pattern is, it's like a tortoise shell pattern. Usually has a lot of red in it, red and cream, some black, different things. But hers is mostly just cream and black. Maybe some like tint to it, or red tint to it, but I'm not sure. Anyway, she's good at catching flies. We're hoping she's good at catching mice because we live in an old building, and especially with winter coming up, they like to come in to get warm. So I'm hoping she can help with that.
Earn her keep.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, out into the snow with you. Look at this face. Isn't that a cat you'd kick out into the snow?
That yeah, really brings out the ruthlessness in me.
She just wants down to play because I've been holding her this whole time, so I'm gonna put her down now. Or no, you're not going up there. She's already acting like an actual cat. She's already acting like an actual cat because. Well, I mean, she's a kitten, so she's learning and stuff like that. And for the first time, it was last night, I believe, we were watching something on my wife's laptop, and we were watching Netflix. And of course, what do cats do? They lay on your keyboard. And so the entire time, it was just like minimizing, scrolling up and down, the mouse moving everywhere because her feet were touching the mouse pad, stuff like that. So, cat things. Ow.
People think they just don't know better, but I'm telling you, man, they're sadistic little fuckers. That's why I like them.
They are assholes. Cats are assholes, usually. And I actually, to be perfectly honest, I am more...
Perfectly.
I am more of a dog person. I don't despise cats, but some cats are just assholes.
They can be very mean, but as mean as a cat can be, it can be just as affectionate.
I've been around some very nice cats, like... The problem with getting a kitten or a puppy or anything that's a baby is that you don't know what the personality is going to be like. And you can do your best to mold it, but, animals are like people too. They have personalities that they're just going to have. And I prefer to have chilled out cats. I mean, they're fun to play with, but, like, if they're just freaking out all the time or plotting your death, then then it kind of gets old. But I've been around both, but... I've been around some really nice cats. I've also been around ones who literally would, like I said, plot your death. Someone I knew, I forget when this was, probably back in college, someone I knew had a cat that would, every time I go into the place, the cat would sit up on, why does your camera have words on it?
My camera has words on it?
Hold on a second. Oh, I see. It's because my camera's not connected to Skype. Anyway, it would like hide, and then I would sit on the couch. It would sneak around without me seeing, find a place high up to leap from, and go for my neck and or head.
That's horrifying.
Yeah. And then there's the ones that like trying to make it look like an accident. I mean, at least she was straightforward about it. There's ones that will like wait until you're at the top of the steps and try and trip you.
What? What did I do?
Meow. Oh no. Oh dear. Is the neck broken? Oh, not this time. Shucks. So, there's those cats. Other than that, yeah, we had my son's birthday and not a whole lot else, really, of note. Yeah, it's a good time. Anyway, you know what we should do to get things going a little bit since it's been a couple weeks?
Usually when I want to get something going, I inject something.
Oh, how about a little bit of indie news?
Indie just news what the doctor ordered.
Are you bored with the same old games?
Yeah.
Why, then give yourself an indie news injection.
Thanks, Indie Games.
This week on Indie News Injection, the first thing we're talking about is old news because between all the busyness over the past couple of weeks, we also it's been fairly slow indie news wise. There's been a lot of AAA news, but also just us being busy. So we're covering stuff that's actually happened for a couple of weeks now. But anyway, Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire has come out with their first DLC, Beast of Winter.
And I bought it. I haven't played it yet, but I bought it.
I haven't beat the first Pillar of Eternity, so I haven't even played the second one yet. But this is, again, because it's developed by Obsidian. Obsidian, I would say, is AAA when they're being published by, by like larger companies,
Bethesda. Whatever, yeah.
However, the fact that Pillars of Eternity was kickstarted and this is all self-funded outside of the Kickstarter, I'm like, okay, well, it's at least worth a mention in the news. That's why I mentioned Pillars of Eternity. However, we don't do a full feature on it. But it has been, DLC has been released for $10 on Steam, which had some interesting, I believe it adds a few characters. I'm trying to see past my big ass. Tim Donnelly calls it the Death Star on my microphone. I believe it adds some characters, and you actually go to hell, and there's a dragon that you get to fight. New stuff.
Yes, yeah. The dragon definitely seems to be a major selling point.
So you have played some of the second Pillars of Eternity, though, right?
I have not. No. I'm actually waiting. I'm waiting. My plan is that once the move is done, that all of my free time, what little I have, will be devoted exclusively to Pillars of Eternity.
You're just gonna veg out.
Yeah, I don't want to start it in a period of volatility and then have to leave it and come back to it, because the first Pillars of Eternity, I essentially took up a part-time employment playing that game, like literally 200 hours. Bam.
How into Dungeons and Dragons are you?
I'm not as into it these days as I would like to be.
Okay, so you don't watch streams of D&D groups and stuff like that?
No. Okay. I used to play all the time when I was younger.
You know Matt Mercer and Laura Bailey, like the voice actors and stuff like that?
Yeah.
They do Critical Role, which is a D&D stream. Yeah. Very, very, very popular.
I'm aware of it, but not a follower myself.
They actually, I believe they do some voices in the game, but they actually partnered with them, and their first campaign characters are actually characters. They put the portraits and voice lines in Pillars of Eternity as like free DLC for people that own the game. And so if you're fans, I think I mentioned this when we talked about Pillars of Eternity 2 the first time, but so if you're fans of that, you can actually play as them. You have to create the characters like by recruiting like nondescript adventurers at taverns, but you can create the characters as accurately as you can within the Pillars of Eternity universe, and use their portraits and voice lines, which is pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
You know what else is pretty cool?
What else is pretty cool, Josh?
We Happy Few officially released, and gone through pretty big changes since the first time we mentioned it. We talked about it on Peep Show a long time ago. We Happy Few, if you don't know, was basically an open world survival with some plot points from like non-linear plot points that you could follow. Set in this like drugged up version, alternate universe, Great Britain, that had lost to the Germans in World War II. And the gist of it is that the Brits, I don't know about anyone else, but the Brits lost to Germany in World War II in this universe. And the Germans were basically like, okay, we're going to take all the kids under 13 as collateral, and you guys can just live here. But if you try anything funny, we got your kids, remember that. So they gave all the kids away. And to forget the fucked up shit that they did by giving their kids away and all the messed up, just the world being messed up, they developed a drug called Joy. And basically society runs on this drug because everyone is just fucked out of their mind. Just basically hallucinating that everything's fine, completely blocking out their memories of the bad shit. All sorts of messed up. except for people called downers and or wastrels, who are people that either don't take joy or can't take joy for whatever reason. And they end up, like, they're basically in the slums, essentially, still messed up because they want to be on joy, they're not, and they're miserable. And it used to be a lot more open and survival based, but now it's more linear and more narrative based. And you actually play as 3 different characters. I haven't seen. You play as the original character from earlier versions, which is Arthur, I believe his name is. Throughout the first part of the game, I haven't seen the other 2 characters, but eventually you do get to play as another woman. I forget her name. Hold on, now I gotta see. Well, the point is, you play as a woman and another guy at some points through the thing, and you discover more and more lore of the universe as you go through. And I know Arthur's thing is that he's trying to basically reconnect with his brother who got taken away on a train to Germany. And I'll leave it at that without spoiling anything. It's a good time. And the survival and crafting and all that sort of stuff is still in the game, but it's more akin to like RPGs now that you see, rather than open world survival games. So, congratulations to the We Happy Few developers, which is Compulsion Games.
Yes.
Yes. And for the release, you can go get it on Steam for, I forget how much it is. I don't have Steam up, but this isn't a feature, so fuck that. Like I said, light on news this week, so I think we're just going to go into a bit of a discussion. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk about, especially now that I have you here with a dev point of view, that we're going to talk about level design. Might be interesting to devs that listen to this podcast.
A hot topic, definitely.
Yeah. And I came about this thought about talking about it because I was designing a level in the game that we've been talking about. Just kind of seeing how I was just testing out the software that you showed me, the flowchart software, and I was like, there really is a lot of times a disconnect, or there can be a disconnect between devs and consumers, and I was wondering, why do you think that may be? Because when you're making a game, the point is that you want to sell it, right? Usually, the vast majority of the time, it's because you want to sell it. Not the only reason, but that's a big reason.
You certainly want to keep being able to make games in the future.
So they would want to not necessarily appease, but appeal to consumers by creating level designs that are for consumers and not just because the dev tends to, I think they get this like tunnel vision when they're making these games. They have a specific vision and they stick to it a lot of times, and it sometimes hurts the games. What do you think about all that?
I mean, that's definitely one part of it. The other thing is that it's really easy to become really enamored with sort of nuances of craft, right? So like a great example, I think a great parallel here is like, incredibly like insanely technical like guitar music, like, jazz or metal that's like just like incredibly like face melting. It's super fast, it's super complicated, but it's like completely atonal. It has no groove. It has no, and if you are like a guitar player or whatever, pick your instrument here. Like, something like that becomes really interesting to you, right?
But it alienates like a whole group.
It does. And there's a segment of the audience that can appreciate it as well, even if they're not crafts people themselves. But it's lost on some people, and it actually is a hindrance, to some people. Definitely. There's a lot of controversy or conversation, I guess I'd say, in like the immersive simulation world, because these immersive simulations are incredibly popular with a small group of people, but they're also insanely expensive and time consuming to make, and they struggle. Prey famously struggled to make the sales points that I guess ZeniMax wanted, or whoever was in charge. Deus Ex again, hugely sort of upsetting news that what was it? IDOS was like putting any future Deus Ex games on hold, and I think it has a lot to do with that intricacy. Developers are super fascinated with simulation and emulating real world interactivity in the space of computer.
Well, with that comes like a lot of this, and you have a lot more insight into this specifically, but it comes a lot of this open world freedom of choice thing that is very popular now because of that immersion aspect. But that makes level design so much harder because you have to account for so many variables. Between technical stuff like, okay, well, this person can't be allowed into this place, at a certain point, so we have to make some way to not let them in there. So, or just.
I mean, you're also just designing. The more intricacies you have as far as choice, you're just designing exponentially more content than any one player is ever going to see.
Yeah.
So it ends up really requiring a large audience base to get a full, sort of have the full significance. But, I think it comes down to the fact that devs are going to be part of a sort of a niche, sector of the audience, whereas, consumers is such a gigantic tent. There's so many different types of gamers. Out there, and especially in something like a first-person shooter, for instance. Let's take that because it's a, it's
that's all narrow hallways right there.
It is, but you also have the sort of it expands because at its core, a game like Deus Ex or Prey is a first-person shooter as well. Mm-hmm. So
technically, Skyrim,
yeah, totally.
It's not shooting, but the point is that you're first person attacking.
Right. If you strip away all of the RPG elements of it, you sort of have a shooter or an action game at its core. So what you wind up with is this situation where you're making these incredibly massive games, and I don't know, maybe the Elder Scrolls is not the greatest example because they do have a massive and incredibly devoted fan base. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. You definitely, in the context of a first-person shooter, you might be looking at opportunities for like an incredible amount of intricate world building, but your consumer is really just looking for, like you said, narrow hallways or arena areas where they can just mow down, enemies upon enemies upon enemies. So like, any developer, I think what this comes down to is you have to start asking the question, well, what does my audience consider value? So.
Yeah. Since we have a lot of devs that watch, what would be your advice to not let them slip into to be open to the fact that maybe their original designs might not be the best for consumers, and to just create something that's balanced, and because that's really what level design is balancing, right? You're balancing the environment, you're balancing maybe items around, you're balancing the enemies that are coming at you, the interactions that you have, the pathways that you can take, all that sort of stuff. So what would be best design, your best advice?
Well, I don't. First of all, I'm still a student of the craft, so my own views are sort of developing on this, and I also don't think that there's a single catch-all. It depends. So, for instance, you're designing a point and click level. It's going to be completely different, approach than somebody who's designing a shooter level or a survival game or whatever. But generally speaking, there are two things that I really like. The first thing is sort of a given. Listen to people who play your game and have people play your game, and not devs. devs are really useful and they can provide a lot of information, but nothing will lay your game bare like having your average Joe or like a fan of the genre play the games. And then the second thing I would say is something that I've been trying to do more of lately, and it's design by subtraction. Take your idea, put it on paper first because it's quicker to iterate. Shave it down to its absolute core essentials. What's the bare minimum I need to create the game that delivers the experience that I'm looking for? Get that in place, and then add your other ideas in as you can. I would say like the place where I learned about the concept of design by subtraction was actually in an article about the game Ico or Ico. I'm not sure. I've heard it pronounced both ways.
Is that
the old PlayStation 2 game?
Is that the one about the wolf? Or am I thinking of something different?
No, that's something else. It's the one from Team Ico, who made The Last Guardian most recently, and also Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah,
they had a game called Ico, which was a puzzle game set in a castle, and you play a little boy with horns who has to lead this angelic creature around.
Okay.
And basically, and I'm trying to remember who it was. There was another game whose developers, it might have been Spelunky, perhaps, whose developers were saying that they had learned to design by subtraction by reading whatever developer notes or interviews with Team Ico guys. And the idea is that like each part of your game is going to be more impactful if it has less, clutter around it. Doesn't work for everything. Obviously, some people like super massive, complicated RPGs with thousands of intersecting statistics. But definitely whittling it down to those core elements that deliver what you're trying to do, I think, is a good place to start. So,
you know what? Going a little meta here. This actually gave me an interesting idea for like a new little mini segment that you could possibly do. And I know you say you're not the most experienced dev or whatever, but you still have the experience and the point of view. We could do like a little Ian corner where you could talk about dev stuff specifically.
I'd be down to do that. I'm definitely, I'm in the process of developing things myself. So,
since you're going to school for it too, you could basically just copy your professor's.
There you go.
So for the day.
Once I get to Canada, y'all can get a George Brown College game design, professional certificate course right here on IGR.
There you go.
I'll give you the Ian's notes. There you go.
Yeah, I think we should do that.
I think that would be fun. Definitely. The other thing too that just occurs to me as sort of a final thought here. And one thing that I definitely learned, again, this is in regards to simulation in level design. There's a huge temptation to make absolutely everything possible interactive. Because the idea we've been pummeled with this idea that the players want a game immersion and choice, and players, and that what choice means is that you have a game where you can do anything you want. I beg to differ. In my experience, from listening to gamers and watching them play things that were too interactive, and overbearing as a result of that, is that what people want is a curated experience that doesn't feel curated, but that gives them freedom within a context that makes that freedom feel significant.
What it sounds like to me is that you're comparing gamers to toddlers, which is actually what I'm doing right now, but not you. Because when you think about small children, they crave structure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it becomes overwhelming.
Yeah.
And they don't like it, and then they start to cry. Exactly what gamers do.
Well, if you want unstructured choice, we have the real world. The reason that we value our escapism is precisely because, it gives us. Because I think it's true. I think even as adults, structure can be really entertaining. I think games in and of themselves are structures. Now, we generally don't like structures like homework or desk work or whatever, blah blah blah, but we do like to perform tasks that are obscured behind and I use this term really loosely, like a narrative, right? So it could be a story-based narrative, it could be a gameplay-based or mechanics-based narrative.
Why do you think people love choose your own adventure books so much?
Yeah,
there's a finite amount of choices that you can make, but you still get to make a choice.
You have just enough agency to feel like you're a part of the story, but you have enough structure and that the story feels meaningful. And honestly, I feel like frequently games like The Elder Scrolls doesn't always deliver on this. I feel like Skyrim in particular, instead of feeling a great example is the choice between the Stormcloaks and the Empire. And on the surface, aesthetically, it seems very different. But because the world has to persist around you, you can't change anything too drastically, right? So instead of giving you like a structure the way a BioWare game might, or even like a game like New Vegas sort of funnels you into this cataclysm that you've shaped as a result of your actions, what the Elder Scrolls games do is basically say, well, we'll just, or what Skyrim does in particular, is basically say, well, we'll just make these two factions ultimately interchangeable. And that works as far as it works, but past a certain point, gamers who are really in it for the experience, they might feel that their choice is less significant.
Yeah, I went back and played, because I started off on the side, not the Rebel side of Skyrim, the other side. It's been a long time since I played.
The Empire,
Imperial side. But then I went back and played the other side, and I was like, outside of a few things, this is the same game.
Same game with a slightly different paint job, and this is exactly
just
what
other people that are yelling at me instead of these people.
Right, exactly, and this is the kind of thing that people were really pissed off about with the ending of Mass Effect 3, right? Is that it's literally the same ending with a different paint job depending on what choices you made, and I would argue that Mass Effect gets away with it better because the choices you make along the way are relatively significant, but a lot of that went away even in the third game, so a lot of
Mass
attention
Effect
is
2 was
drawn.
the best.
Mass Effect 2 was amazing, and it had that intricacy. And you can look at the diagrams. They have the diagrams online, and what you'll notice is that while there's a lot of intricacy and a lot of potential permutations, there's a really rigorous structure to them. So there are very definitive conditional pathways that lead to certain outcomes that are modular, so you can have certain different characters can die or be successful based on whatever you have happen. It sort of came crashing down in Mass Effect 3 because, instead of creating a world that really responded organically to your choices over the course of the series, instead you got a series of character-based missions. Oh, that character's dead. Well, here's a placeholder character who will literally deliver all of their lines for them. So
now I'm curious, who did you let die?
I lost Tally. It was hard.
Really?
Oh yeah, man.
That was my that was my love interest.
Yeah.
She was the robot one, right?
Yeah. So I was my love interest was Liara, but I was tight with Tally, and I gave her a task that she unfortunately just wasn't up to, and she took one in the dome, and man, that was rough. That was real hard.
I let the sniper guy die.
Oh, was it what, Legion?
No, not Legion. Legion was the AI.
Right.
No, the sniper, the green sniper dude.
Garrus, the carrier.
No, not Garrus. Garrus was the other guy. The sniper he was like an assassin. He was like green colored.
Oh, was he Thane?
Yeah, that's the.
Yeah.
I let him die, But I was like, well, if I'm gonna let I liked him as a character, but I was like, if I'm gonna let anyone die, it's gonna be him. He has cancer. I remember he had some sort. I thought it was cancer, but like he had some sort of disease that he was gonna die anyway within a year.
He does, yeah.
So I was like, why would I why not? Like, I mean, just let him go. I don't know. Maybe that was cold of me.
But here we go. I mean, I think that this conversation that we're having right now is a testament to the brilliant, narrative design. I guess this is less level design and more narrative design, but
design
for sure. Yeah.
Well, you know what's in our design?
Is it starting some riots?
Yeah, baby, starting riots. This week on Starting the Riot, we're talking about and I gotta get the transition going. Hold on a second, because I'm bad at my job. What is happening in Unavowed? Why did I?
Transition done in the style of the cop cars near your house.
Wajidai has made this game, Unavowed. If you don't know them, they were the publishers of Shardlight, which we really loved, made by Francisco Gonzalez. And before that, they were the publishers of Techno Babylon. I don't think they developed that, but they published them there.
They provided one developer, their artist, Ben Chandler, who is the wizard.
This actually reminds me a lot of Techno Babylon, which is also a fantastic game as far as like the style goes. But and then as far as what they developed is the
Blackwell.
Thank you, Blackwell. I was having a stroke.
What a series!
However, this is a brand new IP from them, the first one that they've developed themselves in a long while, and it's really interesting. First of all, gotta do my best not to spoil anything, but there's multiple origins that you can play through. Male and female actors, male and female cops, male and female... I forget what the third thing is. But there's multiple origins that you can play through. I'm not sure how... I've only gone through one so far, so I'm not sure how it affects differently as far as the game itself goes. But you become... You are essentially... the beginning of the game, you are possessed. And these people are trying to get the demon out of you because you've done some bad things because of the demon inside of you. And once they help you, you ultimately become part of their group, which is called the Unavowed. And they're this secret, paranormal fighting, order-keeping, ancient group that have chapters all throughout the world. This one just happens to be in New York City. And because your life is ruined due to this demon, you're like, well... And you also now have, special abilities in the form of being good at point and clicks, I guess. You become part of this group and help out, solving cases and also hunting down the demon that has been exorcised out of you. And there's probably, without spoiling anything, there's probably an overarching, larger plot line as well with the demon, but I'll leave it at that. It's really cool because this is one of those things that your choices matter. There's also a very small basic recruitment mechanic to this. And you can choose who to bring with you a la BioWare style. Which again, you can only solve certain puzzles in this game using certain people, also certain dialogue with certain people, that sort of thing. There's one of the major choices, again, not spoiling anything, but one of the major choices is whether or not to let a certain person live or die, essentially. I'll leave it. I'm trying to be very vague about it.
If you spoil anything, I will reach through this microphone.
I have not finished the game. So I don't know how that affects things in the end, but they're making it seem like it will heavily affect something as the game progresses. So I'm excited to find out, kind of. I'm also a little bit scared because I'm not sure I made the right choice. It was a very tough choice. It felt like Telltale style, like oh god, this both suck. So I don't know. We'll see. So
I mean, that sounds good to me. I'll tell you what. Guilt is gameplay, man.
I believe the third occupation for the Origin is bartender. Now that I'm looking at the gameplay on this one, I chose male actor because, of course. But anyway, point is, it's got some cool mechanics that have not been done in the JaShinYa game. I can't think of another point and click that was done something like this. Really, I remember Techno Babylon wasn't anything like super innovative, but it was still, the narrative in it was still very new age, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And sprawling, incredibly epic. Very impressive for the work of a single man.
Yeah, so once again, impressive to Wajid. Impressed of Wajid's ability in the... Of course, this is Dave Gilbert. That is right, Gilbert, right? Dave Gilbert?
Yeah,
Okay.
Dave.
I was getting mixed up. Dave Gilbert.
Not with Ron Gilbert, LucasArts guy.
This is Dave Gilbert, who, of course, knows his shit when it comes to adventure games. What are you most excited, since you haven't played it yet, what are you most excited about?
Well, based on what you've told me, I mean, the elements of choice and the fresh mechanics are really interesting to me. I do feel like Wajidai does a pretty good job, both among the games they develop and among the games that they, sort of, I guess, the talent they acquire of like really finding even just slight innovations on the point and click formula. And I remember the Shiva, which was Gilbert's first game, which was, I think, like an AGS community game that got a makeover for publication, sort of started his company. I remember playing through that in about an evening and being really struck by the it was not afraid to give you choices that actually dramatically affected, like in life or death ways, the outcome later in the game. And I was like, damn, that's really ballsy. So that is interesting to me. I mean, I don't know, man. Like honestly, as much as I love Techno Babylon, I love Primordia. Those are some great games with great storytelling. But Gilbert himself is really impressive. I might rank the Blackwell games, if not my favorite, among the games. Possibly I would offer them up as being the most objectively well crafted. So just seeing what he's got up his sleeve this time is really exciting for me.
I should also mention that it is fully voice acted. I actually forgot I actually auditioned for this game.
Oh, okay.
And I always get upset. I'm not angry, but like I always get a little bitter because like I'll hear the characters I auditioned for. I'm like, they did a good job, but if I had known that's what you wanted, I could have done it.
Right, of course.
But the people the voice acting in this game is very good. So you should enjoy that, and also, of course, the art, as you can see. But one thing I always comment on when it comes to point and clicks is the puzzle design. A lot of times, point and clicks are infamous for, it's notorious
being impossible
for
literally
illogical,
impossible to beat.
Yeah, just like illogical shit, and you get stuck in that sort of stuff. And there were 2 or 3 puzzles so far that I've gotten like stuck on for a short amount of time, but whether either me like stopping for the day and coming back the next day and playing, or just like spending some time staring at it for a while, or just doing the classic click on everything. Right. Eventually I did find out what I needed to do, and by the way, there were no walkthroughs when I played this because I played it before it was officially out. So I did not look. I had no opportunity to look up as much as I wanted to, but I did eventually figure it out. And when I figured it out, it felt good. I always enjoy the feeling of being like, "Yeah, man, I did it!" Like a first grader or like a 2-year-old that pooped in the potty for the first time.
For sure.
That kind of victory is nice. So good job on the balance and logical puzzle design. What does that sound?
Someone's in the kitchen.
Oh, are they blending their keys?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Making sure. Anyway,
but it's it's interesting that you say that too, because that has been my experience with with Gilbert. Generally speaking, he's pretty good at balancing his puzzles. Yeah. I beat several of the Blackwell games. Huh?
Is the other Gilbert his brother?
Oh, I have no idea. If he is related to Ron Gilbert, that would be pretty interesting.
I mean,
that would explain a lot.
I feel like they are, but now I don't know, Wikipedia it, I guess.
They're certainly brothers in spirit, at the very least.
But the point is that the other Gilbert is pretty infamous for making the illogical puzzles, such as the Monkey Island.
Monkey Island, yeah, of course.
Mix the fish with the glass eyeball, and you get a pair of keys.
Oh, man, I hope they are related. That would make me feel less like crap about not having Dave Gilbert's career.
You could
then I can blame it on nepotism and then be
just change your last name to Gilbert, and then everyone.
There you go.
Yeah.
I feel like there is an Ian Gilbert out there somewhere, like a notable Ian Gilbert that I would have to fight Highlander. Well, so I could fight my own double Highlander style, and I could change my name and fight the holder of my new name as well.
Just peel the skin off and wear it. It'll work.
There you go.
Anyway, how much is it on Steam? Do you have that open?
I don't, but I can get to it.
Because I do not.
Well, that's fine. I have it. I'll have it in just a moment.
All right. Do you like to, while I'm looking at this, do you like when you're doing dialogue choices, is usually like a standard good guy, neutral, and dickhead sort of responses to things? Do you like, which one do you usually pick?
It depends. For a long time, I was like a strictly evil guy. By the way, it's $14.99.
$14.99. You were an edgelord back in the day.
I was a super edgelord back in the day, but nowadays it depends. It depends on how I'm feeling in the world. There was this moment, I feel like my coming of age was in Dragon Age Origins, where I started out as just like the biggest dickhead in the world, and then at some point I had this realization. I was standing in my camp, 90% of the people who were following me hated me, and I was like, oh man, the future of this kingdom actually depends on me. I should probably grow up and stop being a douchebag to Alistair. And that was a big moment for me, because then I sort of turned it around, and then I was a good guy in some games. But there's one series that if it ever continues, I will maintain my strict evil position, and that is Knights of the Old Republic.
You just want to be a Sith.
My favorite part of Knights of the Old Republic is that there were two ways you could be evil. You could be like Darth Vader evil, where you're this foreboding and melodramatic Sith Lord. And then you could be if Archer, the cartoon spy. Mm-hmm. If he was a Sith Lord, you could do it that way. So you could
I wish he was a Sith Lord now that you
could goad your followers along, and then troll them. Yeah. Anyway, so I don't know. How about you? Are you goody two shoes?
I'm usually good, but I'm spiteful. So if someone's a dick to me in a game, I'll be a dick right back. So a lot of times if there's an end score, that a hidden score in the end, I'm usually right in the middle, because I'll be dicks to dickheads, and I'll be nice to nice people. So
no conflict resolution for you. You just embrace it.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Occasionally I'll see okay, well I see what you're going through. All right, I get why you're being a dick, but usually if you're just some prick, then I'll be like, fuck you. I'll chop off your head.
I'll tell you what, man, the other thing, to get back to your question, that really interests me about Unavowed, that I didn't know about it until you mentioned it, is this idea of character selection, that you can play as different classes and stuff like that. That's really cool.
Well, they're not classes. Are you talking about as far as your party goes?
Yeah, well, I got the impression that you could sort of choose a profession, a background, and an origin story, right?
Yeah, well, like I said, I don't think the origin necessarily changes what you can do as the character, as a player character in the game. It might. I know it does change some dialogue options, because there are some dialogue options that specifically say, for me, it's just in parentheses actor. So because I'm an actor, I can do that. So something like that. I don't think there's like a specific skill that you have that's going to change.
No.
However, the other characters, the NPC, well, actually, I guess they're technically player characters too, because it's a party-based thing. They have like the guy in the top or in the fedora that you're seeing in the gameplay is a fire mage. The other girl that was with him is a djinn, aka a genie, basically.
Right.
There's another guy. Well, I don't want to spoil it, but there's a couple other people that have their own skills as well, so that you pick up along the way. So there's that, but I don't think you necessarily can change your quote.
Well, that's
class.
okay. It doesn't take a huge amount of depth to make me happy. See, I'm the exact opposite.
And that's why you actually have a girl.
Last segment. Damn.
Dick jokes.
Oh yeah, great. Now you've really put me in a corner.
Well, you know what'll make you feel better about your dick?
Is it getting rain?
I can take you to a Peep show.
Peep show, right. Because we're doing the section titles. I'll catch up.
Peep show.
Please give all your attention to Early Access.
You can intro it.
Oh, I'll intro it. On today's Peep Show, we're going to be talking about the indie demo on itch.io for Rainswept, which is a very, very early development point-and-click adventure game, murder mystery. From its website, Rainswept is an adventure game, a murder mystery dealing with themes of love, relationships, and unresolved trauma. The focus is on delivering an emotional story tied together with a charming art style, characters with deep histories, and a moving soundtrack. And I will say the soundtrack is so far. I
like how you went into your news announcer voice. And a moving soundtrack.
Yeah.
Rainswept coming to a PC near you.
Coming to a PC near you in a world.
You could actually do a better trailer voice than I can. I don't have a deep enough in a world. Like I sound like a young person trying to do the. I don't know. Anyway,
maybe I missed my calling. Maybe I should ask Rainswept guys if they want me to do their trailer.
Don LaFontaine, who used to do all the trailers, basically passed away several years ago. So I mean, there's a gap to be filled.
Ascend to the throne.
I don't know why Epic Voice guy that does the Honest trailers hasn't hopped on it, but you know.
He's probably got enough of the YouTube money coming in to keep him happy.
I actually don't think so, but
no.
Yeah, I mean he's probably doing better than I am, but
that's too bad.
But I don't
found
think
out
he's
that
up there yet.
I recently found out that How To Basic. I don't know if you know who How To Basic is, but he's basically an Australian guy on YouTube who screams and grunts and breaks things.
Eggs.
Apparently he's makes $11 million a year or something.
Yeah, it makes sense.
What am I doing with my life?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Rainswept.
Yep.
So I wanted to do this game because it sort of came into my periphery somehow. I don't even remember exactly how, but I stumbled across its Kickstarter or Indiegogo, I guess. And I was really intrigued by it because it's a murder mystery point-and-click adventure game, and so I decided that we would do it for the show. And I played it, and
did you back it?
I did not back
what a
it.
prick.
I'm sorry to say. I know I missed the window, I think. However, I did leave feedback, and overall, I have to say, that it was difficult. It's difficult to give any sort of fully rounded critique because the game is so early in development, and the segment that you look at is pretty small and pretty unpolished. That being said, I am as we know, because we just talked about, I'm a huge fan of the point and click genre, and any effort to keep it alive is, really exciting to me. So in that regard, I liked Rainswept a lot. It had a really nice vibe. It had a really nice, art style. You only get the sort of tiniest little bit of the story, but most of the demo consists of dialogue and conversation. So you can sort of get a sense of how that's gonna flow. And it feels good. It reminds me a lot of a game that I played a few years ago called The Silent Age.
Yes, we talked about The Silent Age for actually going mobile, I think, at one point.
Oh, yeah?
Because it's on mobile as well. But now that you mention it, I can see where you get that. There's an aesthetic there that's actually
there is
similar to
a similar aesthetic, and the gameplay is very similar. Also, the way the dialogues are structured, in that you'll have these sort of linear passages that then branch, occasionally, as opposed to, I don't know what, Unavowed is like, but certainly like, in Techno Babylon or those sort of older school, adventure games, they tend to have a pretty standard, here's like a giant hub of conversation topics, and it like dynamically updates. This is much more, sort of driven, as opposed to that. There are a couple of really interesting things going on here. First of all, the aesthetic and the story are definitely like heavily influenced by Twin Peaks. You play this sort of mysterious detective. You don't know much about him, but he's like super cop.
I've never seen Twin Peaks.
You should watch it. I will.
Does the old one hold up?
The first season definitely does.
Well, because how they did the remake.
They did. It's actually a continuation. It's actually a proper third season, and I would argue that you should watch the first two seasons and the movie, if only to watch.
What was the movie called? It wasn't called Twin Peaks.
Called Fire Walk with Me. Fire Walk with Me. Yeah, I've got a tattoo here that says Fire Walk with Me.
Damn,
that's how much I love
it. Yeah, I was gonna say.
I am, yeah. And the second season sort of descends into silliness because the mastermind David Lynch left to work on movies instead, and then came back for like the last two episodes.
Fight Club. Yep.
So it really sags in the middle of the second season, but it's worth a look. And it's been so influential to video games in particular.
I know, like one of my favorite underrated games, Alan Wake, took a lot from that.
Yep, absolutely. Alan Wake was big. Silent Hill 2, notably, the developers really cited Twin Peaks a lot. For the people who truly like amazing games that most people can't appreciate, but that are actually works of fucking art, and I will fight anybody who doesn't agree with me on this, there's Deadly Premonition, which is virtually an adaptation of Twin Peaks if it was written by Swery65, the insane Japanese game developer. So Rainswept takes a much more sort of low-key approach, obviously, given its genre. You are this detective, and you're like I said, sort of a super cop, really, really by the books guy who is sent in to this small town crime scene where, I don't know, it seems like maybe the local force is trying to sweep some things under the rug. So there's what's ostensibly a murder-suicide. You discover by investigating the crime scene that there might be more to the story. And meanwhile, your character is sort of haunted by these visions. He's like obviously unwell in some way, suffering from some sort of traumatic, mental illness of some sort, possibly post-traumatic stress disorder. Yeah, that's really all you get from the demo, which takes place over the first day. So a couple of things that I noted and that I shared with the developer, and I'm hoping they take into account, is that One thing that I found a little bit lacking was puzzles. There was in the game in the demo, with the exception of like the examination of the crime scene, which sort of just involved examining things to get information to trigger a dialogue. There were, I think, sort of two incredibly basic inventory-based puzzles. One of which was really well integrated into the scene that it took place in, which involved finding a key for a cabinet. And another which was literally, I think, just tacked on for the hell of having an additional puzzle, which involved like getting a wrench for a mechanic. And so I really am hoping that in the main game we see more of the I don't care. Give me a fetch quest, give me a basic inventory puzzle, as long as it's well integrated into the story and makes me feel like I'm participating in a significant way. I'll take it. I don't need intricate or convoluted puzzle design to be happy. But I also don't need something that just feels like I'm, running an incongruous errand.
Does it currently feel more like a walking sim with a lot of dialogue, or
it more feels like a dialogue sim with a little bit of walking?
Okay.
There's a huge, relative to the size of the game, of the demo, there's a huge amount of dialogue in it. The dialogue is could probably stand to be copy edited a little bit, but that's to be expected at this early stage of development. Incidentally, if the Rainswept guys are listening, available for copy editing, just let me know. Happy to do it.
Available for voice acting, just let you know.
Just leave $30 million in the hollow tree behind my undisclosed location in Northern Virginia.
The one with the glory hole in it.
There actually isn't a hollow tree here, so you'll have to bring your own. Yeah, so that's...
Are you Shawshanking this?
I am. I am Shawshanking this. So yeah, I don't know. Did you get a chance to play it all?
No, I haven't. But I'm always back and forth with these. Like the one thing, because I keep looking at the gameplay. And the one thing that I don't know if I should say it bothers me. First of all, it's hard to critique because it's a demo and they got more development to go. But like the UI with like the mostly with the dialogue, as you say, is a little flat for me. It looks like Post-it notes popping up on the screen.
Yeah.
But or like the notepad that you bring up on your cell phone or something. But the other thing that I'm always back and forth on is this animation style, and especially when it comes to something dark, I feel like the tween low detail models, tweened animations, sometimes can take away from these like heavier themes. So I'm always back and forth on that. But at the same time, it's not like bad. It's not like unpleasing to the eye.
Yeah.
It's just.
No, I think you're right too.
It reminds me of like the fucking Canadian show from South Park. What the hell is it called?
Terrence and Phil.
Yeah, like I don't know why it reminds me of that. I guess.
Hey guy, it looks like a murder suicide to me. Oh,
yeah, Nakafaka. Yeah. I don't know why it reminds me of that, but it does. I mean, it's hard to take seriously at that point. But maybe it's just me. I don't know.
No,
I think the dialogue thing though needs to be a little bit sharper.
So I think you're right. That's something that I forgot to mention is that the UI felt a little bit clunky in certain places. It
feels tacked on.
Yeah, well, it's not really controlled the way a point and click is. You have to like, aside from the dialogue, you have to be like near something in order to sort of trigger its little UI node that you can then click on.
Okay. So you can't you can't click on it and automatically walk to it. You have to walk to it first.
Right, exactly. So you're controlling it with with the keyboard and whatnot, which is it can be a little clunky. And the UI audio is a little bit annoying. There's this like
what?
Sound that like every single UI thing that comes up, widget that comes up on the screen just makes the same like yeah, no, it got a little much for me. So some variance in that. But again, it's hard to really ding them for this because it's hard to know, what's final and what's sort of a placeholder.
As long as things like this are fixed and worked on and polished before a game comes out,
Yeah.
Those are just critiques for the current demo. So remind everyone this is Peep Show. This is
Peep Show. This is a demo, and like I say, with a little bit of polish, I think there's a really interesting story, that this developer is trying to tell.
Speaking of developers, I don't think you said their name yet. So for those of you who are illiterate and or watching, or not watching, just listening, the developer is Frostwood Interactive. So I'll just put that out there.
As far as I can tell from my little bit of exploration, I believe Frostwood is a single person as well.
His name is actually Frostwood. His parents were snow hippies.
I believe so. No, his name is Armand Sandhu, and I believe that he's the only one, aside from his soundtrack, who's actually.
Is he from India? Sounds Hindi to me.
He may very well be. Yeah. So we'll see. But for those who are interested in it, the soundtrack is produced by a person, I believe. This would be pronounced Micah Mike, or possibly McCamick, which is alarmingly close to my own last name.
His name is Ian McCamick.
But he achieved some notability for scoring the 2012 point-and-click adventure game, The Cat Lady, which was a real creepy little offering.
Those people are nice. Those devs.
Oh yeah. I played that and I played Downfall as well. I like both of those games. I don't know if they have another one.
They're good people.
Good people. So yeah, overall, Rainswept. I think it's definitely worth checking out the demo. And when I finished, I should also mention when I finished, the game took me immediately to a Google form. That really allowed me to offer any and all criticism that I could possibly have, and so I offered my criticism and just expressed that I was really interested in the concept and the approach. So I really hope that this game flourishes.
Cut to Ian's form that he sent. Stop developing games. So. He is the source of all bad. Hyde. He is the source of all bad Steam reviews.
Oh, man.
Anyway, what we should talk about now, because I don't have a segue?
Is it, what's the last thing? Free fun? Is it something free? We should talk about some fun that is free.
Free fun.
Free fun. Today we're talking about Office Hustle, which is a lovely little free game available again on itch.io, which is actually a student project.
Yeah, I should point out that the developer name, where we usually have the developer studio, I just put NHTV IGAD students because they don't actually have a name, and I'm not about to list every single one of them. So if you want to list the names, you can, but they're not on screen. I just put students.
No, that's fine. I have no desire to give these people any sort of recognition beyond saying that their game is fucking awesome.
Your A- is recognition enough.
Just so that everybody knows, also, these folks are students at this is a design school in the Netherlands. That would be IGAD. So they put together this game, which is a corporate espionage simulator, with stealth as its core mechanic. So you play an intern who has to sort of navigate labyrinths, these cubicle labyrinths, and steal documents and make it to the exit without anybody noticing you. And along the way, you have a couple of things that you can do to avoid people. Obviously, you can hide behind corners and shit like that, but you can also create distracting noises by using water coolers and coffee makers. And if things are getting too hairy, you can dive into the nearest trash bin and wait for the danger to pass.
As one does.
Now, I need to be completely upfront. I had a shameful amount of fun with this game. I really liked it.
You just jerked off the entire time.
I actually played it 3 times through because it's very short, but I really, really liked it, and I really had a good time. And I was like showing people it, and like, yeah, I mean, at its core, this is not necessarily anything we haven't seen before. In fact, I was talking to Josh earlier about how I've been playing through the Metal Gear Solid series, and actually, it reminded me a lot of, like, you know, VR missions, kind of, in its mechanics, in the way that you can manipulate sound. And you know, the other thing too is that it has what, in my opinion, is the only formula you really need for a successful stealth game, which is that you have clear indication of how visible you are, and you have a brief amount of time to recover before all hell breaks loose if you do get spotted. And if you have that, I think you're pretty much golden. So way to go, NHTV IGAD students, at you know, figuring out what some AAA studios haven't been able to master yet.
Alpha Protocol.
Anyone who was playing Alpha Protocol as a stealth game was playing it wrong, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, why would I play the spy game as stealthy? Outside of just being, like, well executed, is there something about this game that made you have, like, an unreasonable amount of fun with something this small?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it just sort of hit the spot at that point. It delivers a really tight experience, unlike a huge, you know, I mean...
So you're saying it's a Snickers bar?
It is. It's a fun-sized Snickers bar kind of stealth experience. Plus, there's you know, these areas are sort of open, and there's definitely a lot of opportunity to try different approaches and stuff. So I don't think I played through a level, like I say, I played through them each probably 3 times, some of them maybe 4, because I think I restarted the game after the first 2 levels.
I really enjoy the animations in this, particularly the one where you dive into the trash can.
Yeah.
Because it's like he's like stuck a little bit, and he has to like wiggle his way into it.
Yeah. That was the moment too. It was when I dove into the trash can and then hopped out the other side of the trash can to continue along a different path. That's when I was like, okay, this is good. This is a good game. A Jud Jame.
A Jud Jame.
A Jud Jame.
You're a good English speaker.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was Office Hustle by NHTV IGAD students. Again. Students. Yeah, we all know, what'd you say, the Netherlands? That's how you pronounce it in the Netherlands. Yep. Those are actual words.
They are.
Run consonants together.
It means Jud Stealth Jame.
Where's Matei Jan when you need him? He could tell us. Do you know Matei?
I don't, really.
Oh yeah, Matei's a cool guy. He makes Pixel Art Academy. His pixel art is fucking beautiful. I would frame it all over my house. You should, if you ever get money for prints for pixel art, go check out his stuff. Anyway, he's been on the show before. He's cool. This is the end of the show. Hope you enjoyed talking about these wonderful indie games. I can tell you that next week we'll likely one of the games that we're definitely going to be covering is Graveyard Keeper by the same folks that made Punch Club. Lazy Bear Games, I believe, is the studio. So good times. We're going to be talking about that next week. As far as the other 2 games go, I'm not quite sure yet. We'll see. But you'll find out eventually. It'll be a surprise, the rest of it. If you want to help us out, you can do so in a slew of ways. If you watch us on Twitch, you can give us a Twitch subscribe. That helps us financially. And if you have They didn't change it for Prime. I know they don't have free ads anymore for Twitch Prime, but if you still have Twitch Prime, you still have one free subscription to give to a channel every month. So that's no money out of your pocket, but money into ours, and it helps us out tremendously. And of course, we also have patreon.com/Indie Game Riot that you can check out as well. Other ways you can help us out is by sending us things like news. If you don't want to have another 2 news story day like we did today, send us news. You can do that through Twitter at IGR Podcast or Facebook.com/IGR Podcast. Of course, you can contact us by sending an email, contact@IndieGameRiot.com. Do you have any last words, Mr. Mechanic?
No. Does no count? Does no count as a last word? Are all of these last words?
Yeah, no matter what you say, they're last words. So you've lost.
Well, then let's leave it at that. Fuck.
Appropriate for this show. That's fine. My last words is, that's it. Anyway, nothing more Indie Game Riot than that ending right there. All of that together. That's great. Say your goodbye, sir.
Goodbye, sir.
You did that last week.
Oh, fuck, did I?
Yeah.
Oh, you should have just let me leave it at fuck
Unoriginal bastard.
Sorry,
I do the same thing.
I don't tell the dad jokes, Josh. The dad jokes tell me.
I'm not sure what that means, but I do the same thing every week since the very beginning of the show, so don't feel too bad. And I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Toodles!